You're listening to Materials Business, the podcast where engineering, leadership, and innovation meet diversity and inclusion. Hosted by Monica Hernandez, engineer, entrepreneur, and industry advocate. When we embrace different perspectives, we create stronger industries, smarter solutions, and lasting impact. Now, let's dive in.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when are you watching us, and thank you for being part of the material business community. My name is Monica Hernandez, and I am your host, and I have a really special guest, Brian Livingston. Thank you for coming.
It's good to be here with you, Monica. Thanks. Appreciate the invite.
It's a pleasure to have you in because we're going to talk about something that is very interesting. We're going to talk about money, return on investment, when you are trying to do, and then when you are optimizing your decarbonization efforts. And we're going to go through all that along your side. So thank you so much.
Yeah, pleased to be here. I could give you just a quick background on me. Chemical engineer for over 40 years. The last 20 years, though, was spent with Caterpillar in their diesel engine division. So I kind of understand chemistry and kind of understand diesel engines. And so that's where this whole technology kind of meets for me. So I'm pleased to share my knowledge with everybody. And just in case you have to tune out quick or something, I know that happens, sometimes happens, decarbonize5.com is how you can go find out a little bit more about me and about this technology, and kind of we get introduced to each other or whatever. Decarbonize5.com. But anyway, I'm excited to talk about this with you, Monica.
It's amazing. So let us back up a little bit, Brian, and tell the audience, what is that term? What is decarbonization really mean?
Well, sustainability, decarbonization, carbon footprint, all those things are such big buzzwords, such big topics in our world today. But to decarbonize, if you just take the word apart, is to use less carbon, and the technology that I have access to and that I use to help customers takes basically 3 to 7% of carbon out, or it increases the efficiency. Let me put it that way, so you don't have to use as much diesel. And we can get talking about that, afterwards. But, the world is trying a lot of different things to decarbonize. Electric, that's probably the most popular. Everybody knows what's going on with electric, from electric cars up to electric excavators and mining equipment, electric locomotives even. Most of those are still, frankly, kind of pipe dreams. They're in the very early stages of development, some of those bigger things. But then you got hydrogen. There's hydrogen, large equipment. People are working on mining trucks that burn hydrogen and locomotives, et cetera. And I applaud all these efforts. I think, we got to do something. And so I think that's great. One of the issues, though, is that some of those things are a long way off. If you look at completely electrifying everything, that's a long ways off. And we all know that, even though as much as we'd like to, think that we could just flip a switch and boom, the whole world's electric. We all know that's not true. So there's a long gap there. Pick a number, 25, 30 years, before we're, really deep into whichever it is. And the world is still kind of arguing over electric, hydrogen. There's a new one, ammonia, actually using ammonia in internal combustion engines. That's interesting. But anyway, and then there's some more short-term things that the world is working on. I'm sure you've heard a lot of these too. You got biodiesel, and you've got renewable diesel, and both of those are slightly different as well. Renewable diesel supposedly is the exact same molecule as diesel. But yet they do claim, the makers of it claim, you get like 5 to 7% lower tailpipe emissions out of it. And then you got biodiesel. And biodiesel, okay, I'm going to nerd out on you just a little bit here. It has a couple extra oxygens on that long chain molecule that makes up a diesel. And so you got a little extra oxygen in there, which helps reduce carbon dioxide. However, it increases NOx. So there's always a trade-off in everything, right? So those are kind of what's going on right now. And then there's the technology of let's just use less diesel, you know, and being more efficient with it, which is what I'd love to talk about, is a great way to bring that down. And those numbers can be um, in that 5 to 7% range as well. So it's about the same as renewable diesel, without all the headaches and the and things that come with that. And I'm not bashing that industry. We're all trying to do something, and I think that's great. So anyway, there you go. There's short dialogue on
Thank
where
you.
we're at today.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that brings in a lot of points. We've had people in the podcast that came, like Brian, another Brian, actually came and spoke about hydrogen, and then we've also had solar and
Huh?
wind and all those technologies. And the conclusion we have all come across is that first, like you said, we are not ready with 100% any of them right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then collaboration is like it might never be 100% of one of them. It might be just 10% plus 60% plus 80%, whatever it is. And then a collaboration to really get to the targets and that we are getting into. But the round that you gave us and on putting them together, it really helps the audience kind of look at potentially ways of looking at other things. Perhaps we are looking at bigger stages and sometimes smaller steps that we can implement right away will help us as well. And that, I think, is the beauty of what you're presenting today is what are some of those smaller steps that we can take today that will get us closer and then that have some return on investment, because that is also important.
Sometimes I kind of worry that we're spending all of our time on these big far out things like electrifying everything, or hydrogen or whatever, and we're kind of missing um, what can we do today steps. If you're spending all your time on these things that are going to take 25 years, and you're kind of missing, what's right in front of us here. Yeah, I hope we're not doing that. Actually, I know we're doing it in some places, but that's one of my messages: is let's do what we can now. I mean, let's have our smart people out there working on those things. I think that's great. But in the meantime, let's do what we can right now. And there's a lot of it. There's some things we can do now. Let's look at them.
Yeah, we normally call that the low hanging fruit. And
Yes.
so
Yep.
let's dive into it. What is the low
Sure.
hanging fruit that you want to present us today?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll start with, the technology, that I'm very enthused about. In fact, let me spin around here and grab a prop. This thing here looks like a copper cylinder filled with expensive rare earth catalysts and stuff, and because that's exactly what it is. It's a copper cylinder filled with rare earth, expensive rare earth materials and such. And what happens with this thing, as you put the diesel fuel in one side, they go in as long molecules, right? Diesel is long molecules, and they come out the other side, some of them, not all of them, shortened, because what happens in here is a catalytic cracking, where you break a long molecule into shorter pieces. And that happens with catalysts. And there's nothing magic about this. That I try to explain it the best I can every time, because I guess a lot of people will try to just make you think how smart they are, and kind of have the opposite. I try to have the opposite thing. I want to bring this back to like high school chemistry, that we all had to take, and most of us slept through, by the way. But those longer chains, and we all kind of know, if we kind of bring out the cobwebs in our mind, we know that longer chains would take more energy to burn than shorter chains, and so shorter chains are just more efficient. And so you break up some of those longer chains into shorter chains. And again, by doing this catalytic cracking on these things, and that's kind of where the physics and the chemistry are in this thing. So as you're feeding, and again, not all, but some of your molecules are now shorter. As they're going into the cylinder to be burned, they're going to burn more efficiently. Um, so, by the way, I like to always mention to people, this is nothing new. I mean, this chemistry and physics is done in refineries all over the world every day. There's nothing new, nothing magic about it. Now, what's new and novel, I think, is putting it into a tube that you put under the hood of your truck. That's kind of novel. But there's nothing new about the chemistry going on. Well proven, all over the place. So that's in a nutshell how the technology works, and really why it works. Because then you think about what you got, the more efficient combustion, in your cylinder, and more efficient combustion gives you more energy per. Well, you have more energy pushing the cylinder down in an internal combustion engine, and less being spent on breaking up the molecules because some of that's already been done in this device. Now, if you think about that, though, if you're burning more efficiently, you're going to be producing less soot, and you're going to be producing less emissions. Now, because you're burning 5 to 7% less carbon, you're going to be, diesel, whatever your source of carbon is. That means you're going to be producing 5 to 7% less carbon dioxide. I mean, that's just kind of simple math. But again, when you're doing it more efficiently, you also get the benefits of lower carbon monoxide, lower NOx, soot, those kinds of things as well. And so there's a lot of benefits there. You think about, oil change, for example. Why do you have to change oil in vehicles? Because you get it dirty with soot, and you get it polluted or diluted with VOCs, or volatile organic carbons. So if you take those out of your process, I don't want to say take them out. That was a bad thing to say. If you reduce them, then your oil life's going to last longer, right? And also, if you take out some of the soot, which acts like tiny little abrasives, I call them like tiny little charcoal briquettes that are rubbing away on your cylinder liners, your valve train, piston rings, things like that, your engine's going to last longer before you have to rebuild it. And so those are a couple just hidden benefits there of more efficient combustion. But those are a little harder to measure, but they're there for sure.
Absolutely. And you have mentioned that the technology works in refineries, and I just couldn't stop my mind but going when I was in inspection, and I went into the cat unit and then in the reactor, and then we had all that catalyst coming out and then going into the inspection, and then it's exactly what you're describing. And on the other side, on the vehicle that is having those by products doing some damage, is exactly like in our pumps or in our piping, where we have damage by erosion, or we have solids that we weren't expecting there, and then we get all of a sudden a mechanism that is not supposed to be there, and it's a byproduct of something upstream. So
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to that in the audience. And what makes it's really interesting for the people that are listening to this in Spotify or Apple Podcast. If you go to YouTube, you'll be able to see the piece that Brian was showing. Brian, can you show that piece again? That little tube, the cylinder?
Yeah.
So it is like putting all that into a small part so we can serve another industry, which is now the automotive industry. And then when you were talking about efficiency, I was imagining when I'm driving my car in the highway, and then it has a feature, a sensor that says you're being more more efficient with your gas. So that reminded me of that. So exactly, it's not like something that we don't know. Perhaps we haven't put the dots together, right?
Yeah. And again, it's, yeah. And it's willingness to try something, that's new. One of the things about human nature is we tend to be a little bit scared to try something new. And again, this is not new. It's been around forever. The chemistry's been around forever. But let me put on my skeptics hat here a little bit. If you are working on a program for electric, whatever, mining trucks, locomotives, or whatever, that's going to be put off long enough that by the time that ever happens, you're probably going to be long gone. But with this kind of a technology, you try something, and literally the payback on this unit can be as low as 1 month or as high as 12 months. That's kind of the general thing. And so in most diesel intensive industries where you're drinking a lot of diesel, like railroads, mining, port equipment, marine, you're usually talking somewhere between 2 and 4 months, so that's 3, 4, 600% ROI on this technology. And so it's a little bit faster. It's a lot faster than whatever you're going to see in electric or hydrogen or anything like that. And so it does put the spotlight on doing something now. And if your company has the culture of not taking a risk, this is a little tough, because it's like, I'm putting my reputation out there on something I'm not real sure of. And if you're rewarded for risk, great. If you're only rewarded for risk that works out, well, then you're not going to want to take any risks, right? So there's a lot of company culture involved in this kind of thing too. So I always try to comfort people with that. And most customers want to go through a testing phase of their own, even though I have reams and reams of data from other customers and lab studies, engine dynamometer studies, things. Most people still want to test, and that's okay. So I help them through all that.
Absolutely. So which industries are the ones that are using it like now that can say, okay, yeah, I tried this and it's working?
Yeah, I mean, with like other customers, you mean? Or?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing this for about 5 years now. The invention itself and technology has been around a lot longer than that. But I've had many customers, and if anybody wants to set up a call with me or something, I can go through all of those, individually with you. Some customers don't want their names out because actually it's a competitive advantage. If you've put this on your equipment and you're burning 7% less fuel digging ore or hauling goods across the country in your truck or whatever, it's a competitive advantage. So I have some customers that have an NDA with me. They don't want me to talk about them. Most don't, and so I'm free to talk about them, especially the ones that have been kind of old and the NDAs have expired. Those kinds of things. So anyway, I'm happy to talk about that, but it's probably better on an individual basis. But
Absolutely.
big names from all over the world.
And so it can be installed in any kind of vehicle or any kind of equipment?
Well, yeah, anything that uses diesel or anything that's kind of like diesel. A niche application for this that we've had and we've used around the world is in oil-fired burners or oil-fired boilers, because it changes the fuel. It doesn't change the engine. So, if you're squirting your number 2 fuel oil into a big box to burn for a boiler or furnace or whatever, you're squirting in fuel that's actually had some of its molecules shortened, like I described earlier. And so you're going to get a more efficient burn in there, which means using less fuel to get the same amount of work out of your boiler, your furnace, your diesel engine, whatever. So yeah, any machine that uses diesel, this will help. It
That's
does come
very,
down to economics.
yeah.
I get asked a lot of times, could I put this on my pickup truck that I drive to work? And the answer is yes, you certainly can. And will it help? Yes, but it depends on how fast it's going to pay back, because this thing is fairly expensive. It's filled with a lot of rare earth materials, etc. So if you put it on your pickup truck, and depending on how many miles you drive it, it may take you several years or more to pay back, which would, perhaps not be a good investment. In the trucking world, though, in North America, Most trucks will drive like 120,000 miles per year, and this device pays back in about a year in that application. That's kind of our slow rudder application is in trucks. But if you think about a 1 year payback on a truck, um, if you put on your CFO hat now for a minute, you probably don't have a lot of 100% return on investment projects sitting on your desk waiting to be approved. So 100% ROI, getting your money back every single year is a good investment. But then when you move into mining locomotives and things like that, it just goes up from there. You're in the multiple hundreds of percents for return.
Absolutely. So, is that mean that, for example, the consumption on compressor or drilling equipment versus a truck, for example, is quite different?
Well, in trucks, we see like a 3 to 5% improvement generally. And in most larger pieces of equipment, it's usually more like 5 to 7. If you look at all the data we have over the years, it's actually more than that. But I like to under promise and over deliver rather than the other way around. So, the 5 to 7% is a reasonable number you can expect in that range. So yeah, and why they're different between an on-road truck and almost everything else, we don't know. We don't know why it's different.
Wow, that's so interesting. So, is there any design change that has to happen in a piece of machinery, or when they come out of you go to, I don't know, Caterpillar, for example, and buy something like a compressor from there? I don't know if that's even possible, but anyway, um, it doesn't come from the fabric like that, I am assuming. So you have to do some modifications.
Well, that's the beautiful thing. The computers in all modern day engines pretty much take care of that for you. Um, because if you're producing a little more, this 5 to 7%, let's just call it 5%, to be conservative. So if you're producing 5% more power, your ECM or engine control module or engine control computer is going to pick that up, and it's going to back your fuel off 5%. And so that's really how you save. Um, we've had an interesting thing a number of months ago where somebody had bought these and installed them on a very old engine with a mechanical governor on it, and they didn't see any change in fuel consumption. And it caught them by surprise. I mean, it caught me by surprise. I had to think about that a little bit because on an old engine with a mechanical governor, you need to go out there with some tools, a screwdriver and a pair of pliers, and adjust the fuel rate down because it doesn't adjust the fuel rate automatically like a modern engine does. And so anyway, if you have a very old engine, you have to do that yourself, or you're going to call it 5% more power out of your engine. And maybe that's what you'd rather have anyway. You can do what you want with that extra power, use it or dial back your fuel and save it. But anyway, to answer your question more directly, the engine takes care of all that because of the modern computer systems.
Amazing. So there is no direct impact into someone that.
No, and that's why when you install this, it doesn't affect your warranty at all because you're not changing anything on the engine. You're just changing the characteristics of the fuel, just a little, yeah, that you're putting into the engine, just enough to make that difference.
Huh, that's so interesting. And so if we put our hats on now up on like the environmental piece,
Mm-hmm.
so we've spoken about, okay, the return on investment, you're like burning less, and then the chains come shorter, and then the exit product, you'll have less of that
Mm-hmm.
going into the atmosphere. Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Go
it
ahead.
was just to summarize it for the audience. We have some young audience also in some places, so they can figure in their head what is that all mean. So it's interesting that why don't we know more about this technology?
Well, that's why I'm out here spreading the word. Yeah, I'm trying to make it more well known because it's something that the world kind of doesn't really know exists. Um, you go out there and do a Google search for ways of reducing fuel consumption or something, and you're probably in the truck world. You're going to get some aerodynamic things you can put on your truck that make your truck more aerodynamic, and I'm fully supportive of that. I think those are great. Um, but you're also probably going to come up with a lot of liquid additives. People ask me sometimes, what's your big competitor? And there's really nobody that makes anything quite like this. So on the physical side, really not much competition. But people do get us confused with a liquid additive sometimes, where you pour in a certain number of whatever in every tank full. And I don't follow those as a competitor, really, because there's so many of them and you read reviews on them, and some say they're a fraud, some say they're great, and everything in between. So, they come and go real fast too, because it's real easy just to make up a solvent based something, in your garage. And I don't mean to diss on any of my liquid additive, you know, people out there. Some of them sound like they're doing okay. Some of them sound legit. Some of them definitely sound like they're not legit too. And there's so many of them, and it's so easy to start up a business like that I don't really keep track of them as a competitor. So anyway, that's kind of my answer. My biggest competition is lack of awareness. You know, Second one is getting confused with liquid additives that you have to keep adding to the tank all the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, that's a great clarification. And as you were speaking, then in my mind, I was thinking, okay, how do we maintain those things? Because we install them beautiful, and then what's next? We talk
Yeah.
about reliability, and how do we maintain our equipment all the time? So if this is a new component added into a piece of machinery, how do I maintain that?
Yeah, boy, that's an excellent question. And that's part of what makes my job more difficult, is because I have to tell people that there's really no maintenance to it. And the more I talk, the more it sounds like, this is too good. And so that's one of my difficulties, actually. You just install it once, and it just runs forever. And I really don't know the definition of forever. People ask me, how long does it last? And I have to say, well, I don't really know, because we've had some of these out in the field 20, 25 years. And if you understand how a catalyst works, it just takes some of the hydrogens off and puts them back on again. It's like a magnet, it's like a hydrogen magnet. And again, if anybody wants to dive a little deeper with me, give me a call on this, and I'll go through a presentation. I've drawn some cartoons to show this. And on our website, we have some people who are much better at graphics, have done some beautiful jobs talking about how this cracking thing works. But you're it nothing in here dissolves into the fuel. And so it never needs replacing. And when you hear some sales guy saying, "Oh, it never needs replacing," it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But once you understand how a catalyst works, it really is it, because there's nothing dissolves it. It takes some of the hydrogen, takes a couple of those hydrogen atoms off of the molecule, sticks it onto the catalyst magnet, and then gives them back when it's needed after the breaking of the molecule is complete. And so it yeah yeah there's no maintenance. Long answer to your quick question, but I needed to explain myself, because whenever somebody tells you, "Oh, it just lasts forever," your first reaction is, I don't think so.
And especially here, right? We talk about materials all the time, and then a large portion of our audience makes their living, including me, going and making repairment plans or maintenance improvement processes and all that. So it's very interesting. When I hear about that, it's like, oh my God, I want to know more. So I'm going to schedule a call for sure, because I want to know more. Uh,
Yeah, again, making my job in sales, although I'm not really a great sales guy. I'm pretty mediocre at that, but I'm a pretty good engineer. And so, once I get involved with a customer, help them solve their problems, that's where I really shine. It's where I really enjoy spending my time. So, but again, making my job on the sales side harder is, this thing will be under the hood of a truck or something, and it just gets coated with dirt and junk and stuff, and nobody even knows what it is. And um, it just sits there and quietly does its job, until you sell the piece of equipment. And we'll tell people, when you go to sell that equipment, take off the catalyst and put it on your new machine. Hardly anybody remembers to do that. Yeah. Because again, it doesn't need any attention. So that makes my job a lot harder, because, whoever got excited about it, ran the tests, understood its value, got the project approved and put this on their machines, by the time it needs replacing, whatever, they're long gone, and nobody else knows anything about it, because it's just this wide spot in the fuel line that nobody pays any attention to, because it doesn't need any attention. So that makes my job harder, but yeah, that's the way it goes.
Awesome. This is so interesting, Brian. And we have been, time goes so fast when I record this. It's like, oh my God. And I look at the clock and it's like, oh my God. Why did you enter this world? Why Brian one morning woke up and said, I want to build a mini catalyst reactor to improve.
Yeah. How did that happen? Well, this is not my invention. It's a technology that is owned by a company in Florida. And I use them, as basically that's the technology that I use, to help my customers, save fuel and reduce CO2 and such. But what led me to it, about 5 years ago, at the very beginning of COVID, um, that might be almost 6 years by now. Time flies. But Caterpillar fired me along with about 4,000 others at the very beginning of COVID, to make their quarter end numbers meet. That's just what happens. So I was casting around for another job, looking for something in the middle of COVID, in the deepest heart of COVID. Pretty tough time to go job hunting. And I'm no spring chicken either. I'm older than I look, so it's hard. But anyway, a friend of mine introduced me, to this technology, saying, "Hey, I just heard of this. It's interesting." So I started looking into it, and I flew down to Florida to tour the factory, talk to the company a lot, talk to the CEO. I talked to the chairman of the board. It's a small company. I talked to ex-customers, or not, should say ex-customers, ex-employees and customers, and got introduced to these stacks and stacks of tests that have been done. And once I was very skeptical, coming a lot from, my background, 20 years with the largest, heavy duty engine maker in the world. And wait a minute, how come we don't do this? How come we don't know about it? Well, I kind of figured that out. But also, what was the big thing for me was this can't be real. And once I studied the chemistry and the physics and the results and customers and even ex-employees of the company, boy, well, after I understood it, especially understood the chemistry, it's like, oh, of course this works. I mean, of course it works. And, then my question was, why aren't we using this more? And I saw a pretty wide open market for myself to go out and talk to my old people. I've dealt with cat engines and with heavy duty equipment users all over the world during my time with Caterpillar. I'm like, I know these people. I know what they need. I know how they think. I know how, their financial conditions and stuff. This is kind of a natural. So I picked this product up, and I've been pushing it into the heavy duty diesel industry since then. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into this. I got into it as an extreme skeptic, which I imagine some folks listening or watching right now are thinking, yeah, that's me. I don't think this is real. And I would just challenge you, give me a call on that, would you? I'll share my story with you and we can talk about it. In fact, I'll put a plug in here. Go over to decarbonize5.com, check that out, and then schedule a meeting with me and let's talk. Because I was totally there with you. I was a complete skeptic when this thing started. But after I've seen the results and understood the chemistry and, and put this into many customers' machines and seen the results, I'm a believer.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful story of reinvention. And I know COVID was very difficult for many industries. I was in a women's entrepreneurs dinner last night, and there were very heavy, impactful things that happened to many of our businesses during that time.
Yeah.
And so instead of, you know, keep funding on a door that is not longer opened, you looked around and then you picked that. So this is for anyone that is out there like feeling there is no more ways, or there is always a way, and maybe you can look around and then find some different ways of looking at yourself and then investing in you. And then even if you're skeptical, if you do your due diligence and then your homework and everything that you have done, then you have a new career that excites you and you're making an impact in the world, and we're going to live a better world for our children and things like that. So it's very important to make that, uh, to listen to those kinds of examples.
I like sharing, the downsides of my story too, because all of us have downsides. And, sometimes we come on a podcast and, try to portray like life is totally wonderful for me, and that's not true for any of us. We all have ups and downs and stuff. And so I shared my story getting booted out of Caterpillar, but, landed on my feet. And, I want to be an encouragement, for anybody who's listening, watching, that is in those similar shoes right now, going through some tough times in a career, whatever. I just hope I can encourage you, that it'll be better. It'll be fine. I remember so many times in my career, um, having other people around me perhaps get tossed out of an organization and then find out later that they're doing way better. And that's it. All of you have probably heard this in your career too. If something bad happens to you, you get fired somewhere. Don't take that too seriously. It's probably just a bad fit, and you're going to wind up somewhere better off. And, the statistics really bear that up too. So anyway, a
Absolutely.
bit of encouragement there for you. If you're in some trouble right now, it'll be
It's
okay.
so important, so important, so important to keep, showing the world what you're saying. It's not always flowers. And my son says that I see the world as ponies and roses, or what does he say, like rainbows and ponies. And that's what
Right.
I choose to, right? Like I choose
Yeah.
to, oh my God, it's super gray outside, snowing. It's like, oh my God, all those accidents that happened yesterday because we got a really big snow dump. But I still see some beauty on it. So it takes that mindset. And then sometimes just listening to someone like you with all those years of career saying, you know what, guys, it's okay. Don't worry
Yeah.
too much. In the longer scheme of things, you're going to be okay. And that is very powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. I mean, let's be real with each other, And another thing I have about business, even in today's age of internet business and stuff, I believe that all business is really person to person. Even if you're reading a script on a description of something on the internet, somebody wrote that, and their personality is coming through, and such. And so, yeah, still a big believer in person to person. So I do love talking to people, understanding them, where they're coming from, what their issues are, any way I can help, that kind of thing. So yeah, big believer in the person to person nature of business.
Brian, thank you so much for coming, for showing us some ideas that we can implement right away. I loved everything that we've discussed. Low hanging fruit for everyone to look into and to get between 100 and 400 ROI. Like, hello.
Yeah,
Uh, Really, really cool. One last message for the audience.
One of the people I really love talking to is that beleaguered decarbonization champion or sustainability champion that's been given all kinds of goals by their company. Go do this, go do that. We have to show some results of shrinking our carbon footprint, et cetera. But generally, those people aren't given much budget to work with either. So they're kind of expected to just come up with the stuff out of the thin air or whatever. And those of you who are sustainability champions or have that on your goals for the year, you know what I mean. Those are some of my favorite people because I can help them make their goals, or at least make some real progress towards their goals. But yet also you can hand your organization 100 to 400% return on investment project while you're doing it. And that really makes it a win-win. Because you sustainability champions, you're usually not given much to work with. Give me a call. Let's talk through that. I can help.
Amazing. Last question, Brian. Why should people listen to the Material Business Podcast?
Excuse me? Why what?
Why should anyone listen to this Material Business Podcast?
Oh, well, there's just a wealth of knowledge coming out of your podcasts. I mean, the ones that I've listened to, I've learned a lot. And so, yeah, I'm very pleased to be here with your other guests that I've heard are impressive people.
Thank you. That's infinity growth, right? Brian, thank you very much for your time. To the audience, thank you for watching or listening to this episode. And then we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
I'll just put one last plug in for decarbonize5.com. Go over there. By the way, what's there are some calculators that you can get. So if you put in put in some things about your own equipment, and then there's a slider you can figure out, or you can put in 5 to 7%, whatever you think you might be able to get with this technology. And it's going to spit out how much fuel you can save, but it's also going to spit out how many tons of CO2 you can reduce. Doing the savings on fuel is kind of just a math exercise, but doing the tons of CO2 reduce is a little trickier. So anyway, get all that over there, and then you can decide if that kind of incentive is worth following more or not.
We're gonna add the links down below.
Perfect.
So awesome. Anyway, thank you everyone for being here, Brian. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you for sharing so much.
Thank you so much, Monica.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Materials Business Podcast. Feel free to visit infinitygrowth.ca to see show notes and explore other episodes. If there's someone you think should hear this episode, please share with them. Take care of yourself and have a great rest of your day.